Hey, welcome to Isekai Manhwa Recap. In this video, we'll be covering Chapter 1 to 8 of the Manhwa series, Triple Times F-Class Trash Hero. Before we begin, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon to be sure you don't miss the next episodes. The chapter begins with a statement saying the story was a dramatization of the original work with some deviations. A man speaks out loud to a group of corpses, still wondering why, after 10 years of being in a fantasy world, it was different than what he read and seen in comics, cartoons, and novels. He admits to being normal unlike the stereotypical otaku protagonists that are summoned to another world to save it, and was frustrated by the present world's treatment of him. He mocks those dead for being chatty when they were alive before declaring that it was time to fight the Demon King so he could finally go home. He walks through the desolated hall leading to the king's room that was covered in demon corpses. He also muses on the fantasy world he was in, a world where might makes right and where the people who summoned him heaped the title of Hero of Legend, the savior of mankind from the Demon King, on him. Sword drawn, the hero kicks down the door to see a humanoid demon sitting on a throne. The demon introduces himself as the pinnacle of evil, Protagonist, while the hero is happy that the demon before him was the real one and not one of his many clones he was forced to deal with along his journey. Before they start fighting, the hero interrupts to ask why Protagonist stood by as his subordinates were slaughtered by the hero and his party throughout the journey. The demon insisted that he had actually been sending stronger minions against the hero the entire time as revenge for the previous minions killed, ultimately creating a viscous cycle. The hero instead thanks him, as not confronting the hero from the start, the Demon King had strengthened the hero through experience and loot. Protagonist promptly cuts off the hero for the assumption using the excuse of demon politics. Disappointed in his unanswered question, the hero finally fights Protagonist, determined to defeat the enemy and leave the savage fantasy world and become a cultured Earth citizen again. Their battle was strong enough to crumble much of the Demon King's castle, yet the hero admits that he didn't need fake, cheap tricks to fight, as the endurance he went through in the 10 years was more than enough. The hero defeats Protagonist, and as he lay dying, he asks the human if his strength was from the rage of losing his party companions. The hero flinches before answering no, it was due to his training. Protagonist thanks the hero for a wonderful fight before disintegrating. Surprised how easy the final fight was, the hero calls out to the fantasy world god that he did his duty and wants to return to Earth. He fantasizes on what he will do when he returns, including thanking his parents, dating, and more importantly, finally using a modern-day toilet. His thoughts are interrupted by the arrival of a mysterious shadowy female figure, who reveals herself to be said fantasy world god. She gives a speech on how a true hero's path is tough, but they didn't lose their hopes and dreams and formed bonds with people who supported them. And thanks to learning love and friendship from these people, the hero was able to defeat the Demon King. She congratulates the hero before showing him his report card, catching the man completely off guard. The man, named Kang Han Soo, looks at the results. Combat power, S. Achievements, A. Reputation, D+. Character, F. The scorers also asks why Han Soo killed his sane comrades, causing the man to flinch again, and also reveal that the corpses he had been monologuing to in the beginning of the chapter were said comrades, sage, sword princess, elf queen, mercenary king. He had ambushed and killed them before confronting Protagonist because they were a hindrance. He then points out how they all mistreated and abused him during his journey while also tending to impose on him. The goddess declares that he failed, as despite succeeding, his personality was the opposite of what a powerful hero should be. He must be retested for the sake of world order and peace, meaning he will return to the first day of his test. And ignoring the confused and angered Han Soo's protests, he is teleported away. The goddess states that the faculty and teaching staff praise for his success, a professional instructor was dispatched, and that he was designated as a trash hero. Han Soo then awakens in a summoning circle in his high school uniform and 10 years younger, on the first day of the test. Before his first summoning, Han Soo was with his friends in his classroom during break. The two male friends talked about wanting to go to a fantasy world. One cared more about going on adventures while wielding magic and gathering a harem, while the other thought it would be better to utilize one's knowledge of modern science to dominate the world. They then argued at whether high-grade magic or martial arts were the best in one-shotting anything before asking Han Soo what did he want to do in a fantasy world. The teen ponders the question while looking at pictures of toilets on his phone, but before he answers, a bright light takes him away. In the present, the teen recognizes the room he was in as well as the summoning circle that kidnapped him. Worse, he was back in his untrained, unequipped body. The only thing Han Soo retained from his 10-year journey was his memories. He grows upset that he had failed a hidden test that lasted a decade, which he had struggled through in his quest to return to Earth. He is interrupted from his thoughts by a blonde-haired beautiful girl dressed in pink welcoming him. He recognizes her as Lanuval, the person who summoned him while also working as an archaeologist. She shows him the fantasy world called Fantasia, a different dimension from Earth and the same world he lived in during his first round journey. Han Soo, who already had finished the goal, quickly summarizes why he was here. The Demon King has awakened, endangering humanity, and a hero from the prophecy was summoned to save it, surprising La Nouvelle, who then introduces herself as a summoner and an archaeologist who learned of the prophecy during her travels. She also adds that her name means truth in Fantasia's ancient language. Han Soo angrily berates her for pretending to be cute and sweet as well as asking things from a person that was living normally and was then kidnapped by them. The stunned girl apologizes to his delight. One of the king's knights declares that the king was waiting for Han Soo, who counters that he was waiting too. He tells the panicking knight in La Nouvelle that since he is the only person in the world that could defeat the Demon King, the king himself should listen to what he has to say. As the knight sends a message to the human king, a woman's voice tells him to be modest through metaphors and sayings. A surprised Han Soo finds himself in a pocket void with said speaker, a masked woman dressed in red. He asks who she was and she reveals that she was the special instructor sent to help him become a brave hero, putting her credentials on the line. She also reveals that the majority of tested heroes never encounter these instructors, and even those that fail and retake the tests do so quietly, meaning very rarely do the instructors get directly involved. Han Soo became one of these rarities due to his F-grade personality, and the teen realizes that all his actions may be monitored and interfered with by his new observer. Han Soo angrily asks the woman why was he unfairly failed, when he succeeded in the goal of killing the Demon King and left nothing behind. The woman counters that was the problem, surprising him. The masked woman reveals that due to the mistakes he made in his first round, he should have lost against Padonar, but instead easily won against him despite it. Originally, after his loss, he should have reflected on said mistakes and improve himself for the retest. Han Soo concludes that she was here to get him to reflect. With another metaphor and saying, she wishes that he becomes a helpful, kind person who will care for his comrades, a deep and wide ocean. She leaves, along with the pocket dimension, adding that his lessons will start now and she will return tomorrow at the same time. Han Soo grabs his hair in frustration over his homework, and La Nouvelle, mistaking his stress for something else, asks that he lets them know of any side effects of the summoning, since it was her first time doing so. He doesn't tell her about his encounter but concludes that the masked woman and her associates were a group of professors that raises heroes, through kidnapping and training them. He didn't know their purpose but believes them to not be malicious against him. He also realizes that they were powerful enough to send him back to the past and can easily kill him if they were displeased with him. He decides that he will cooperate with the teaching staff for now until an alternative presents itself. He asks La Nouvelle to guide him to the king, his deeply held anger against the blonde for summoning him gone, though he wonders if her fate will be the same as the first round. While walking towards the king's room, Han Soo thinks of a plan to negotiate with the king for favorable conditions since the useless king needed him more than he needed the king. Another knight that was with them suddenly tells the teen to watch what he says in front of their ruler and glares. Amused that he was seen through, he asks the knight if he will hurt him, the only hope against the Demon King, whether right or wrong. A male voice calls out, liking Han Soo's spirit, and declares that he will hit him before throwing a punch. The surprised Han Soo barely dodges the right hook, earning a grazed left cheek. But the teen was more shocked that the man, whom he recognized from his first round, was here instead of somewhere else. And it didn't help that with his weaker body, he wouldn't have been able to fight the man. La Nouvelle calls the man out on trying to kill Han Soo, but the boisterous man, the palace knight Captain Alex, excuses his actions as a courage test and points out that the teen wasn't dead. Han Soo thinks back to how the savages kidnapped and used violence on people in the guise of the hero treatment, remembering how he was used and thrown away by the Fantasians. But he believes that this time would be different as he takes out a pen from his inner uniform pocket and adds to the masked woman, dubbed Professor Morals, that his attack was self-defense. Han Soo crouches before rushing between Alex's legs, striking at the captain's crotch with his pen and resulting in a few rips to the man's pants and the crotch ribbon falling off. Han Soo sees his work and admits to himself that he couldn't do much damage due to his untrained body, but thanks to the knowledge he gained in the first round, he could still wound someone. He also remembered the first time he met Alex. It was after meeting the king and the teen was introduced to him in an orientation. The captain had used the sword training sessions as an excuse to gleefully beat the teen up day after day. La Nouvelle demands that Alex apologizes to Han Soo, but the surprised yet curious Alex declares that if Han Soo defeats him then he will, on his knightly honor, apologize. Han Soo doubts this as even in the first round, when Han Soo finally beats him, the man refuses to apologize, and it wasn't until the man died that he did so. As Alex leaves in a huff, Han Soo wonders if the captain being here earlier than normal was a means of helping the teen relieve his pent-up stress. He also notes that despite losing all his powers, he still retained the knowledge he gained, but it was still ridiculous that someone had made his 10 years worth of effort meaningless. In another scene, the knight that sent a message to the king, instead of stating that Han Soo wanted the king to come to him, simply stated that the teen was requesting an audience with the ruler. Han Soo enters the king's chamber, and within, surrounded by knights, nobles, the royal family and servants, sat the obese king on his throne. The teen looks at him in irritation, remembering how the king was once a warrior who waged war often and participated in battles in the past, but now became a useless dumpling ruler. He notices the annoyed looks from the nobles before being reminded that he was in the king's presence by his knight escort. Han Soo also remembered that the first time he greeted the king, he had respectfully bowed to the ruler, but the audience's reaction was negative. And he wondered if knowing the future let him predict things, since he was fully aware that the dubbed dumpling king would be assassinated in the near future, thus there was no reason to be nice to him. Reminded of Moral's advice of trying to be modest, Han Soo reluctantly decides to be the ocean to drown them all. He bows the Fantasian way while politely introducing himself and thanking the king for being here. The nobles and king react positively to his greeting, but the teen notes that he was forced to learn a lot about the fantasy world's cultures and etiquette during his first round journey. The king then asks Han Soo to look at his abilities, and the teen opens his status window, revealing the following: Race, Arc-Human. Level, 1. Job, Hero, Experience 500%, Skill, Interpretation A, Fortitude F, Assassination F. He observes there was no change from the first round. Repeating an action several times turns the action into a skill, and if someone becomes more proficient in said skill, it will rank up with an increase in efficiency and power. He sees that the interpretation, the ability to understand other languages, skill was the same as the first round, but he notices the addition of 2 other skills that he didn't have at this point in the past, suspecting he gained it during his confrontation with Alex earlier. To his anger, he confirms that besides his body and items, all the skills and levels he gained in the first round was reset. He tells the king his job and level and describes the hero job's characteristics, the 500% experience bonus, shocking the king and audience. Han Soo wasn't surprised at their reaction to this exclusive cheat, as it meant that regardless of talent, he had the ability to grow faster than most people in a 1-to-5 ratio. Any 1 hour of repeating an action he put in was the same as if he had done 5 hours of the same work. The king then reveals that his country, that was near the demon's territory, was in crisis, and orders that after defeating the demons and raising his skills, he should defeat the demon king Padonar. Han Soo privately whines about not wanting to do so, as well as some compensation, but also remembers how much internal problems were happening within the useless king's kingdom that had nothing to do with the demon king. He reminds himself to be modest before asking the king what support will the kingdom give him for his objective. The king instead responds that the kingdom already gave Han Soo their support by summoning him, pissing him off. Han Soo declares that he refuses to help. To everyone's shock, the country's crisis means nothing to him, and their attitude towards him was wrong. They should be asking him on their hands and knees since he wasn't a citizen of the country. One of the nobles angrily yells at Han Soo for the disrespect, but the teen promptly throws his pen at the man's forehead, causing him to scream in pain. Han Soo observes that he was still too weak to give more damage to the strike and wondered if he should have thrown the pen at the old man's eye. The palace guards surround him with their spears, but Han Soo dares them to kill him, since unlike the line of succession to the throne, there will be no one to replace the hero if he dies. So, who will kill the demon king? Han Soo refuses to treat the kingdom with respect, enraged of the country's arrogance and their belief that summoning the hero with no other extra help was enough. He compares them to the demon lord, who was a far better supporter in how the teen's killing of his subordinates resulted in gaining an overabundance of loot. He believes the kingdom won't kill him. It wasn't his concern if Fantasia collapses or not, but he did admit that with him dying, there was no guarantee that he'd be revived. The teen then demands that the king says something. The enraged ruler points out that he had purchased many magical catalysts from merchants and nobles and ordered Lunavel to conduct the summoning. Therefore, the hero was the property of the kingdom. The statement further angers Han Soo, calling the king out on treating him like an object before daring the king to tell the rest of the world what the king just insisted. He will simply go to another country that will treat him better, with the kingdom unable to stop him. He also wonders what would happen if the other kingdoms learn about the king oppressing the hero, predicting the kingdom's collapse starting from the king and his noble allies. Sighing in defeat, the king asks what support was needed. Han Soo asks for high-quality food, shelter, clothing, equipment, and potions, as well as a military map, diplomatic immunity and room service, in reality, sending a girl to his room to spend the night with. He further asks the stunned ruler to give him money, deciding to use his new game plus knowledge to have an easier time. The next day, An exasperated Morals learns of Han Soo's confrontation with the king and chastises him, through sayings, that there will be a chance the king will take advantage of him since the teen was getting financial support and he will have to endure a potential loss even if he wins something. She then sighs, admitting that she wished she had intervened outside of the void they were conversing in, but the influx of students kept her busy. She tells the surprised teen that he isn't the only hero student and that many have graduated and have returned to Earth, happily living while helping the people around them. She leaves after telling him to try harder, returning him to the room where he was staying in on castle grounds. He ponders over the implications that not only was he not the only human who crossed over, but that they were taking certain groups of people, those with delusions of grandeur, to train them into heroes using some sort of practice room. He gives up trying to think about the stupidity of the teaching staff's dimensional prowess meant for one person and flops down on his bed. He is interrupted from his thoughts by a worried Lunavel hovering over him, with her ample chest near his face. A blushing Han Soo berates her for talking to him suddenly, moving her away from him. He reveals that Lunavel had been by his side since yesterday except when he went to bed, and also noted that if he was his past self, he would have reacted more to this situation. It was already a bother dealing with the teacher. He asks Lunavel if he was the only hero summoned. She affirms. Remembering Moral's words on the influx of students who all journeyed to defeat Padonar, he concludes that he and all the other students have been placed in parallel world versions of Fantasia for each person. Lamenting on how more absurd the situation was, he decides to not think about it and instead think of a plan to return to Earth in the shortest amount of time, also wishing to live happily back home like the other graduates. He asks Lunavel to come with him, since now that he finally got his support, he might as well immediately use it. Within the king's throne room, the Dumpling King tells Han Soo that he will give the teen financial support under one condition. That Lunavel will be in charge of managing his finances, surprising the girl. Han Soo himself wondered if he should protest, as he probably would have done the same in his position. Sometime later in the day within the city, Han Soo looks on in exasperation as he watches the cute sorceress desperately asking him to buy a very expensive crystal ball she always wanted. He admitted Lunavel was the wrong person to ask for money management, but since it wasn't his money, he didn't care, so he tells her to buy it. He notes that the city was the center of trade where the best products come in, but at the cost of being very expensive due to street taxes. The most expensive of these items were ones that had magic in its name. Lunavel returns and shows off her new purchase, causing onlookers to stare at them. Annoyed, Han Soo tells the girl to follow him quickly if she was done. He was going to go someplace where he could blend in more, remembering his first round where carelessly wandering around the city in his school uniform gave him unwanted attention. In a clothing store, Han Soo reveals his new outfit to Lunavel, a gaudy, loud nobleman's outfit. He tells the stunned girl that he knew how bad the outfit was, but he wore it for a more comfortable shopping. It indeed works, as the civilians mistakenly believe that Han Soo was a noble and would be less likely to take to him. He walks past the citizens with Lunavel following behind nervously, who then asks him where was he going, since he walked past the blacksmith and medicinal herb shops before, wondering if the teen had been here before. Han Soo answers that he was going to the black market, causing the shocked girl to wonder why the righteous hero was going to an illegal auction. Han Soo guilt trips her into compliance by pointing out how she selfishly brought her crystal orb with the king's money even though he okayed the purchase, making them accomplices. She quickly concedes. She then asks how would he be able to find the market since she only heard rumors about it, including it being hard to shut down due to constantly changing locations. He simply lies, the suspicious girl that he was simply the hero and a hero's true worth wasn't their abilities. He admits to himself that not even he knew where the black market was, but he knew of a place where he could find out. A place he spent time in the first round. The duo reaches a rundown pub and enters. A nostalgic Han Soo looks around before greeting the bartender, Tony, like an old friend. The bartender was in truth a retired assassin who opened a pub. In the first round, Tony had befriended Han Soo and taught him assassination techniques and other skills to live in this fantasy world. Han Soo wanted to reconnect with Tony, but with Lunavel here and his personal mission, he couldn't do so. Tony asks what the teen wanted since the pub sells a wide variety of liquors. A nervous Han Soo decides to use the language of promise, code words and phrases, though worried that it may not work due in part that he learned this later during his first round. He asks Tony if any good liquor came today. The bartender reacts and responds that it could be accommodated if he is able to pay like he could. It was a success. He brings out a liquor keg and 2 small studded cups, announcing that a 27-year-old stout called Black Dragon, the location of the market, came today, when the market starts, and if paired with grilled mutton, slaves, the drink's flavor will come to life. Tony hadn't opened the bottle, had not revealed this location to anyone else, and as he poured the drink from his right, the direction to the location, also adds that Han Soo should look forward to the mutton's quality. Han Soo, satisfied with the information, confirms his order as mutton for two entries as customers. La Nouvelle looks on at the exchange in confusion. Han Soo and La Nouvelle rush out the pub, the teen berating the girl for making them nearly late. They had decided to order some food while they wait, but La Nouvelle, after insisting that the mutton was too greasy, had ordered more food, forcing them to waste time eating it all. La Nouvelle quickly changes the subject by asking the boy if he knew Tony. He admits the bartender was more than just a simple owner. To himself he adds that the man was his first friend that taught him the law of the jungle, and admitted to himself that if he wasn't a hero, then they could have opened a business together. Han Soo then tells La Nouvelle that there was another thing she should keep from the king, a second ability the hero has besides the experience bonus. He remembered in his first round experiencing said ability, to see everyone else's stats besides his own, and wondered why he only saw it. Thanks to Professor Morals, he suspected the reason to be that it was to help hero candidates in the early part of their journey so that they can see strong and weak opponents and try not to die against said strong beings. He reveals to La Nouvelle his ability to see others' stats and looks at hers, yet notes to himself that her level, 200, was too low to even confront Padonar's weakest subordinates, but she also had great potential. He is then reminded of her fate in the first round before quickly turning and walking away, the intrigued girl crying out why he did so. As La Nouvelle tries to catch up to Han Soo and asks what he saw of her stats, a man appears behind her, cutting off her money pouch and crystal ball with his knife. The man grabs the pouch and flees while she watches in surprise. Han Soo grabs the falling crystal ball and throws it at the man's lower back, causing him to collapse. Han Soo then lectures the man on how injuring the lower back can cause waist pain and leg numbness if not treated. He looks on impressed as the man, revealed to be somewhat higher level than him and having a thief class, slowly rises to his feet and holds out his knife. Thanks to his levels being reset, throwing things weren't as effective, and worse, the man was physically stronger than him, thanks to being higher leveled. In his first round he had to dodge and avoid maniacs, but now in this second round, things were different, his 10 years of experience. He tells the man to drop the pouch and walk away while he won't report him. The thief roars not to look down on him before lunging at Han Soo. The teen sighs before pulling off his feathered hat and flicking it, the feather blinding the man. Han Soo quickly goes behind the thief and rams the crystal ball at the back of his neck, killing him instantly. He again lectures on how injuries in the neck can result in numb arms and stiff necks, though he admits the thief won't be able to do so permanently thanks to going against him. Sometime later, guards arrive and take away the thief's body. La Nouvelle tells Han Soo that she told them about the events that transpired but didn't reveal Han Soo's hero status. Han Soo notes that rumors would spread anyway and would make it more complicated to move around freely. La Nouvelle casually notes how he was experienced with killing, causing him to yell at her to not treat people like murderers. His 10 years of hero work had ingrained in him to kill his opponent who felt like his enemy, but out loud, he asks La Nouvelle what the average adult man's level was. It was 3, and if holding a weapon, a couple levels higher. He reveals that the thief's level was 8 and his skill set didn't show that he was a former soldier or hunter. La Nouvelle interrupts to, falsely, conclude that Han Soo saw that he killed civilians and had taken it upon himself to kill the thief to prevent another victim. Another example of the righteous hero that protects the lives of the people and Han Soo's first accomplishment. She then wonders if Han Soo leveled up. Han Soo looks at his status window to see that he had increased to level 4 thanks to his experience bonus, and he also gained 2 new skills, Sword Key F and Murder F. La Nouvelle lectures Han Soo on how all creatures carry power with them, but although there are cases that their power can grow through age, it was more common to increase their power by stealing or ingesting it. Han Soo thinks on how his new level was of the equivalent of Earth sport athletes. And also on how one grows stronger through killing others, a typical fantasy setting. He's happy he gained levels and suspects that he will gain something from this hunt. The duo continues on the path to the black market. Unbeknownst to them, they are followed by an elf. The duo continue to go through alleyways but are stopped by the appearance of a tall, well-dressed man, who asked if Han Soo was Tony's customer. Han Soo answers not his customer but his archenemy, completing the code phrase and pleasing the man, who tells them to follow him. The organization who runs the black market, dark commerce, had existed behind the scenes all over the continent and weren't easy to fight against. It was because of their highly strict and meticulous security that not even Han Soo, in his first round, was able to fully reveal them. He was glad that the password he knew from said round was still usable, and their guide leads them to an old abandoned-looking building. The trio enter with La Nouvelle suspecting that the house may have belonged to a general. Han Soo whispers to her to look at the ground, where a somewhat faded magic circle lay. He observes that the very thorough organization must have used expensive materials for this. La Nouvelle was still surprised that the black market wasn't in the capital. Their whispering is interrupted by their guide giving them magic-imbued masks, wolf-shaped for Han Soo, bunny-shaped for La Nouvelle, that hides their identities. The man admits that there were customers who will roam around the black market without masks, but he couldn't let the future hero do so. Han Soo tells him to hurry up and the man agrees, breaking a crystal and activating the circle the duo was on, teleporting them. The duo find themselves in darkness somewhere underground. Han Soo tells La Nouvelle not to do anything so as not to provoke the masked guards surrounding them. The teen remembered coming to this place often in his first round and was aware that their location was underneath a forest at the capital's west side. The area was occasionally used as the black market's location until occultists summon a demon in the area. Another unmasked guide greets them with a magic lamp, telling the duo that since the auction will begin shortly, he will give them a quick explanation of the rules while guiding them to their reserved seats. They must use a bell sitting on their table to bid, they must pay in advance using coins or jewels, and the black market are not responsible for the problems or losses incurred if they remove their mask or reveal their identity. Han Soo asks La Nouvelle, without saying her name, if she understood the rules. She instead fusses about the teen calling her extra and nearly reveals her name before Han Soo shuts her up. Han Soo wonders why the famous beauty of the central continent decided to naively reveal herself before telling her to never cause trouble here unless she wants to be buried alive. As they walk through the corridor, La Nouvelle notices small, red magic circles along the walls and whispers in fright that these were explosion magic. Han Soo reiterates what he said to her before about never causing trouble as the magic emphasizes that threat. The duo reach a lighted room with a stage along with other masked guests seated on their own tables. As the two sit, the announcer on stage declares the beginning of the auction and brings out their first merchandise, a scarred, muscular man in chains. The announcer tells of how the dark commerce found the man dying after killing a demon within the demon's territory. They nursed him back to health, and in gratitude and debt, the veteran warrior offers himself as a slave. He can be best served as a gladiator or a bodyguard. Han Soo mentally called out the lies as thanks to his ability to see everyone's status windows, the veteran warrior was actually low-leveled with a surprisingly high fortune skill. Other, ignorant, patrons immediately start to bid on the man as Han Soo looks on dumbfounded. La Nouvelle, incorrectly, concludes that the teen was going to buy that outstanding slave to make him into a comrade, just like the ancient hero. The irritated Han Soo remembers during his first playthrough that he had done just that for an elf as well as saving her. He ends up immediately coming to regret that decision when he learned of how much of a racist jerk she was. The warrior was sold during their talk and La Nouvelle becomes disappointed they didn't buy him. Han Soo counters that the real auction starts now, noting that those that immediately spend in the beginning without thought will be forced to watch as the items they really want pass them by. The next merchandise was a former noblewoman whose family was captured by demons. A sympathetic La Nouvelle is shot down by Han Soo, who tells her that they weren't here to have fun nor save the nobles, passing on buying her. He is again reminded of the jerk elf, who would have tried to crash the auction and free the slaves without consulting her master. He bitterly curses her for causing troubles that he had to clean up after. His anguished reminiscing is interrupted by the appearance of the third slave, whom he quickly looks on to enjoy, the item that he wanted.